Hi, I'm Kristen Goodwin. On this episode of the Fox News Rundown, the latest national polls suggest President Trump is still trailing Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. But with 60 days until the election, is the margin tightening? Trump campaign National Press Secretary Hogan Gidley discusses the 2020 race, polls, and claims by the Biden campaign that President Trump is fanning the flames of America's civil unrest. And the coronavirus pandemic halting TV and film productions around the world for months, affecting talent on and off the screen. Fox News Radio's entertainment reporter Michelle Pollino details how theaters and studios are trying to stay afloat and whether their comeback will have a Hollywood ending. Plus, Fox Nation host Tammy Bruce has commentary on how Speaker Nancy Pelosi's controversial trip to a California hair salon. The Fox News Rundown is a daily news podcast where we take a deeper look at the stories important to you. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast player by going to foxnewspodcast.com.
I'm Bill Hemmer.
I'm Janice Dean.
I'm Juan Williams, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Friday, September 4th, 2020. I'm Jessica Rosenthal. New polling data is out as both the president and his rival spent time on the road this week in key swing states. The discussion focusing on police, violence, and protests.
They're saying if he comes in, it's fascist. And then when the city burns to the ground, they point to Donald Trump and say it's his fault. You can't have it both ways.
I'm Chris Foster. More movie theaters closed because of the coronavirus outbreak are back open this weekend.
Movie theaters are adopting a cinema-safe protocol. That's what they're calling it. It basically means that they're going to separate people by parties.
And I'm Tammy Bruce. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
Both President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden visited Kenosha, Wisconsin this week. While Trump met with members of law enforcement and business owners in the town that was badly damaged by rioting, former Vice President Biden met with Jacob Blake's family as well. Blake was shot in the back by police. He is alive, but his family said he was paralyzed, and his shooting prompted the protests and rioting, which Biden addressed with community members.
Protesting is protesting, my buddy John Lewis used to say. But none of it justifies looting, burning, or anything else.
He said as president, he would have a national commission on policing out of the White House.
Because a significant portion of the police are decent people. But no one. There's a lot of bad folks in every organization. There's not a whole lot of people who want to speak up, be the odd man out or odd woman out, no matter what outfit you work with.
He told them about his conversation with Blake's family and Jacob himself over the phone, who he says was out of the ICU.
He talked about how nothing was going to defeat him, how whether he walked again or not, he was not going to give up.
Biden says they prayed with the family and that Blake's mother said she prayed for her son, but also for the officer who shot her son. Biden said the president only wants to talk about law and order, but not COVID because of the number of people who've died and the businesses that have closed. And that win or lose, he will go down fighting for racial equality and equity across the board.
But the country's ready. And if they're not, it doesn't matter because there are certain things I ain't going to change. There are certain things worth losing over. And this is something worth losing over if we have to, but we're not going to lose.
Now, the president, who'd been to Kenosha earlier in the week, visited Pennsylvania Thursday, rallying supporters in an airport hangar in Latrobe.
I will keep your jobs in America, and I'll bring rioters, looters, violent extremists, anarchists. We will bring them to justice. That's what we're doing right now.
Pennsylvania is one place where polling data has shifted. The latest Monmouth poll out this week found a statistical tie, with President Trump having gained 9 points, trailing Biden by just 4 now. The latest Fox News poll showed Biden leading in key swing states by 8 points in Wisconsin, 9 in Arizona, and 4 in North Carolina.
We're in good shape here at the campaign. Our internal polls have us ahead, tied, or within striking distance of all the states needed to win this election.
Hogan Gidley is a Trump campaign spokesman.
And get the president 4 more years, giving the American people peace and prosperity again. And we're really excited about where we are. And the convention was a big reason for that. Things started to turn slightly before when the American people got a chance to see Democrats for 4 days, basically saying that America is inherently evil, that we are the cause of all the world's problems. And we just take a different tact. We used real Americans across this country who pointed to the fact that they received opportunities in America that they would never receive anywhere else on the planet, and how this president's policies made their lives better, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed. And that's gone a long way to remind the American people not just all that the president has been able to accomplish, because Lord knows during the Democrat convention, they didn't say a word about Biden's accomplishments or his socialist agenda because they didn't want that out in public. But it reminded the American people just how high we can be as a nation when you have a party in control that loves the nation, and that's the Republicans, and that's Donald Trump.
Well, what do you make then of the numbers raised by the DNC and the Biden campaign, 364 million for the month of August, and they're claiming that 1.5 million new donors have participated recently. If people were turned off by the Democrats' convention, what do you make of these new numbers?
Well, look, go into the numbers a little bit deeper. What you're going to see is we have vastly outpaced Democrats in voter registration. So you can give it to a campaign all you want to. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to vote. But also, remember, we've been building an organization on the ground in these states, 70 million voter contacts since COVID started to shut down the country in March. More than 1 million people every single month we reach directly via door knocks and other things. So you can't backfill how important it is to have a ground game and an apparatus to make sure people are mobilized and ready to get out to vote. Let's not also forget that it's this president and our social media pages that have more than 1 billion views across our platforms because people are excited and enthusiastic about where the country's going and the leadership at the top with the president in the White House. So you can't go back and look and say, well, they also got a vice presidential nominee in that time in Kamala Harris. Granted, she's the most socialist leftist they've ever received, even further to the left than Bernie Sanders via GovTrack voting poll statistics. But, that's something they haven't received yet. So it's all new for them. We've been there and done that at this point in time. So we're breaking records every month with the money we're raising. It's just Democrats haven't had a nominee or a vice president up until this point in time.
Hogan, Thursday, Mr. Biden met with Jacob Blake's family when he went to Kenosha, Wisconsin. The president, as we know, did not, but he did meet with law enforcement and business owners when he went. Do those kinds of optics matter, the president not meeting with the Blake family?
I think it matters greatly. I think it matters to the American people which president they know would be on the side of law enforcement, be on the side of making sure our American communities are safe and secure. That's obviously Donald Trump. He increased funding to the brave men and women at the local level that are on the front lines, those police officers out there, by billions of dollars over what Joe Biden and his administration did when, in fact, they cut funding to cops at the local level. Not to mention the fact 4 days of that convention the Democrats put on, a Democrat convention, Democrat-controlled cities, all burning and in chaos, and they didn't say a single word about it. In fact, Joe Biden still called them peaceful, still blamed the police for the violence, inciting violence, I think is the word he actually used. And when you compare and contrast that with what we said, that those on the front lines should be praised, those on the front lines should be allowed to do their jobs and protect the American people, these Democrat governors and mayors are bragging about the fact that they're not allowing federal assets to come in and solve the problem. Where we've sent federal assets in, this president has done so. You've seen a drop in the violence. You've seen an end to the looting and the rioting. But these Democrat governors and mayors are trying to have it both ways. They are saying that if the president comes in to help, it's fascist. Well, first of all, it's not. If they're asked to come in, it's completely fine with the Constitution. He could even use the Insurrection Act. But they're saying if he comes in, it's fascist. And then when the city burns to the ground, they point to Donald Trump and say it's his fault. You can't have it both ways. The president's offering to fix the problem. You're bragging about saying, no, we're going to let the cities burn. And I think the American people understand that. So these images you see out of a place like Kenosha, because so much of this was occurring in like major metropolitan areas. Now it's in the heartland of this country. And you're seeing this death and destruction, these assaults on American citizens, innocent Americans just defending themselves. That's a serious issue in this country, and it's obvious where we stand, and it's on the side of the American people and on the law-abiding citizens of this country and law enforcement. Joe Biden doesn't.
Well, let me ask you about that, because we got more.
Let me just point out this one last thing. He's yet to condemn BLM. He hasn't condemned Antifa, and he sure hasn't said anything about defund the police, except that he's for it. So the fact is, he's on the wrong side of these issues, and the American people know it.
Well, and I want to ask you about that, because we have heard more from Biden this past week about how he essentially plans to defend himself and criticize the president. We heard him look into the camera and say, do I really seem like a radical socialist? He did say that looting and rioting are not protesting and that people should be prosecuted. He also wrote in a June op-ed that not only should police not be defunded, they should be given millions more dollars so that they can implement certain reforms like buying body cameras. I have a feeling over the next couple of months, Biden's going to continue to reiterate that and repeat those kinds of words. What do you say to that?
Too little, too late, and I don't believe him when he says it. He didn't do it when he had the chance to do it with 50 years in elected office, and there's a reason these police unions are coming out in support of President Trump and not Joe Biden, who they used to support in the past, because they know President Trump has their back. He has from day one. He will for the next 4 years as well. As far as coming out and condemning violence, notice, as I said, he didn't get specific and talk about the people who are actually committing the violence. And he also said in that committing violence, he said, really, the police are stoking the hatred here. It's the police's fault. So he's blaming the police for something that criminals are doing. And you don't have to guess how this looks. When we're talking about funding, look at his campaign, look at his vice presidential pick. The president increased funding to cops, period, end of story. Joe Biden, when the president went to Wisconsin, he also gave $1 million to the police force in Kenosha to try and help them with the assets they needed, gave $4 million to the businesses that had been destroyed by this lawless behavior. Joe Biden and his campaign decided they'd give money to people who've been arrested for destroying the businesses. The very ones who got caught setting fires to churches, setting fires to federal buildings, defacing property, beating up innocent Americans, those people were taken to jail, and Joe Biden's Democrats and Kamala Harris all decided to put money into a fund that would get those people out of jail. So their priorities are much different. And so while we have this conversation now, going into the election, it's going to be really difficult for Joe Biden to claim the mantle of law and order when he ignored it for 90 days and blamed the police for that criminal behavior.
Tell me, the president was in North Carolina, and he made some comments that some people felt like he was saying that you should go vote twice. Send in your ballot early, then go and vote. If it hasn't been tabulated, then vote. I think on Thursday, White House spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany and even the president himself through tweets, are clarifying that he means, go to check to see if your mail-in vote counted, and if it wasn't, then vote. But that would still technically be voting twice, wouldn't it? Even if your initial vote didn't count? Like, how is this supposed to work?
Well, it's funny. The Democrats are all outraged about this now because for the last several weeks we've been talking about the dangers of universal mail-in voting and the potential for fraud and abuse and double voting. And now they're like, and they were saying at the time, no, that never happens. That could never happen. The system is flawless. And then the president makes that comment, and they're all like, whoa, you can't double vote. If they're so confident in the system, what are they worried about? The fact is the president was not saying to vote twice. Everyone knows that. It's just another trope the Democrats try to use to hurt the president of the United States. But what they also have been caught in here is the fact that this universal mail-in voting system they are pushing is so problematic and will so greatly damage this country's voting system, this electoral process. When you try to change the way this country votes weeks before an election, that is all types of dangerous, and the American people are just now figuring out what we've been saying is absolutely accurate. When you can move the deadline for voting, which Democrats are trying to do in 10 states, to allow votes to be counted after Election Day, it's going to be a serious problem.
Hogan, Gidley, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
This is Tammy Bruce with your Fox News commentary coming up.
Like a lot of things, because of the coronavirus pandemic, the summer movie season didn't happen this year. A couple new movies came out in theaters last month. Most have gone straight to streaming in people's homes on services like Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon, or as a video-on-demand rental, like what Orion Pictures did with the 80s movie sequel Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Whoa! Take it from ourselves!
But isn't that stealing?
Two big-budget movies come out this weekend. One straight to subscribers' homes, not theaters. Warner Brothers Pictures is betting people will come out to see theirs on the big screen.
Tenet, Christopher Nolan's time-bending sci-fi epic, which stars John David Washington, is set to do big business at the box office.
Fox News Radio entertainment reporter Michelle Pollino.
The National Association of Theater Owners are looking at this film to bring people back to the movies. So this is a very big deal. It did bang up business overseas. Now, overseas is not having the problems that we are with closed theaters and, have the theaters closed. But it still did very well. And so far, movies are doing well despite the coronavirus pandemic.
There's been a couple new releases in the last couple of weeks. There was an X-Men movie called New Mutants. There was a
did
Russell
very well.
Crowe. Good. And a Russell Crowe. I heard the movie wasn't Unhinged. And I heard the movies weren't particularly good, but that may prove the point that people just want to go back to the movies.
It did prove a point. Box office, while Unhinged made $4 million. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot to you, but there's 6,000 theaters, movie theaters, in the country. Only 1/3 of those theaters were opened. And, again, spaced seating,
right.
All the protocols for coronavirus are in place, and they still did good numbers. So they're looking at everything. And they've set safe protocols for the movie business moving forward.
So what's going on in theaters now? It's, 25, 50% capacity? You can only sit with your little party?
That's exactly how they're doing it. Movie theaters are adopting a cinema-safe protocol. That's what they're calling it. And it basically means that they're going to separate people by parties. Even if you're a single person, you will have 2 seats around you. If you're a group of 5, same thing. You will have 2 to 4 seats around you where you can sit with your party in a cinema and feel safe.
And it's masks on unless you're eating or drinking, right?
That's correct.
So, on the other end of things, Disney has a big movie that was supposed to come out earlier in the summer called Mulan, a live-action remake of the cartoon.
I will bring armor, leading a man's army. It is my duty to fight for the kingdom.
And they're now pushing that to its Disney Plus streaming service instead of putting it in theaters. It's an interesting test case. The way it's going to work is that if you have Disney Plus, you have to have Disney Plus, and then you pay an extra $30 on top of that to have Mulan for as long as your subscription's active.
You're right. This is an interesting test case. I do not think this is the wave of the future. I do not at all. Based on the numbers that are coming out, and we'll see some big numbers, I believe, from Tenet this weekend, that I've seen with the New Mutants and with Unhinged, and speaking with movie theaters and ComScore's box office analysts, all roads are leading to people still want to go out to the movies. People still love the community aspect of seeing a movie in a theater with other people, despite the protocols in place.
The Mulan thing, I mean, that $29.99, you can say, geez, that's a lot of money, but it's still a lot cheaper than taking your family with kids to the actual movies, and you can watch it over and over again, which sometimes kids want to do. Mm-hmm. But you said you got an early look at it, and it's just not the same. It's
not the same. And there are some great action scenes in this, great fight scenes in this film, that I was surprised that I was not moved. And I know I would be moved in a theater. Right. These are big, powerful war scenes in Mulan. If you've seen the animated version, you know what I'm talking about. Great movie scenes. It fell flat for me watching it on my computer.
Some things are probably going to work better than others. I mean, I wonder if this could hurt even more small little dramas where maybe the experience of watching it at home isn't that diminished, as opposed to watching a comedy where you're in a room laughing with a bunch of people, or a horror movie where you're scared with a bunch of people, or it's just something that you want to see on a really, really big screen. I wonder if it's those little dramas that get hurt.
Huh. I think it's those little dramas that are going to end up on our streaming services.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to get hurt. I think they'll work out a way financially to make that work for the little dramas. I think we're going to have, in big cities, we're always going to have those intellectual art house cinemas, but they will disappear from small towns, and we will see big movie theaters and the comeback of drive-ins, Chris. I really believe what COVID has given us is the appreciation of that drive-in experience again. I do believe that Mulan should be seen on a big screen. I was disappointed.
Drive-ins did good business over the summer. They were even not showing new movies. People were going to see Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Ghostbusters just to get out of the house and go see a movie on a big screen.
And what does that portend? It portends to a communal experience that we're missing. We are in a bunch of communities that thrive together. And what better way to come together than entertainment? And movies, just like sports, bring us together to the field of dreams, so to speak.
So it's not sustainable forever. These movie theaters showing at 25 or 50% capacity, their business plans work on big, sold-out weekends for the new big movies. And their margins just aren't big enough to sustain it for too much longer. At some point, things should get back to normal when the coronavirus thing is gone. But they're going to have to stay in business until that happens.
It's true. They're financially working that out. I spoke with John Fithian, the president of the National Association of Theater Owners, this past week, and this is something that they are planning for in the future. They weren't necessarily ready for this. They know that this may happen again. They understand their business model, and they are also wedging that and using these past couple weekends and drive-ins and those finances to make sure that if this does happen again, if this does continue, they will be okay until it comes back full force.
Okay. The Mulan thing again, I wonder, as long as this is still in effect, let's say the Mulan experiment does well for Disney. I wonder if over the next few months, maybe you see the new Wonder Woman movie show up on HBO Max, or another big movie or two that's on the shelf show up on their parent company streaming service, just to get that money back now, because these are $200 million movies that have been sitting on a shelf.
If theaters are open, they will be in theaters. It's just that experience, unless you have a 60-foot TV and are having your neighbors over and their kids,
right,
it's not going to work. It detracts from what the filmmaker had imagined. What I do see is these movies landing at home a little bit earlier, maybe 2 weeks.
Sure. What's going on with production? Like I just said, there's a bunch of big movies that are just sitting on shelves that were supposed to come out this year that now will wait until next year. What about the production end? Are movies starting to be made again?
Movies are starting to be made again. The Producers Guild of America last week sent out a new set of safety protocols. I've spoken to many people that are on sets. They have a dedicated person to make sure that they are being tested every hour. This is the way it's starting.
Wow.
Yeah. And first of all, they don't want any lawsuits. That's number one. Number two, they have to get the business going. And this is the safest way to do it. Everybody is abiding by these because they understand that if they don't get their business up and running, they're not going to get paid.
Michelle Pollino, Fox News radio entertainment reporter. Michelle, thanks for jumping on the Fox News Rundown.
Well, thank you.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. In these ever-changing times, you can rely on Fox News for hourly updates for the very latest news and information on your time. Listen and download now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Subscribe to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com.
And now, some good news with Tanya J. Powers.
7-year-old Henry Jones got a very unique birthday present this year thanks to his neighbors and his community in Tulsa, Oklahoma. His mom, Carrie Jones, says Henry, who has autism, loves billboards, and each night his family rides around to look at them.
When you have a kid with autism, they're not always interested in things a typical 7-year-old would be interested in. So we just go with it. We use whatever we can to help him learn.
In lieu of a traditional birthday party this year, she came up with a different idea and posted about it on Facebook. She asked for contact information for billboards. The post blew up.
I just wanted some contact information. I had no idea that people would grab onto this.
The community responded in just minutes, with dozens of people chiming in with ideas and well wishes, and Lamar Advertising offered to share birthday messages for Henry free of charge. Last weekend, during his drive, Henry got to see a big green billboard reading, "Happy birthday, Henry Jones. We love you more than you love billboards."
He hid his face, which he does when he's excited, and just kept saying, "Happy birthday, Henry Jones. Happy birthday, Henry Jones."
Another sign company put a birthday display in his front yard overnight, so now Henry can see it anytime he wants. Carrie says she was surprised by the support from their community and grateful for her special kid.
Even though he can't communicate with you, there's so much in there, and he's so smart, and his interests are so odd, but we just go with it.
Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
It's time for your Fox News commentary. Tammy Bruce. What's on your mind?
The Nancy Pelosi salon scandal has been appropriately receiving a lot of attention. On its face, it is insulting, an abuse of power, and a punch in the nose of all Americans who've obeyed COVID-19 lockdown restrictions at the expense of their quality of life, and in so many instances, their life's work. But there she was in broad daylight on a security camera inside a closed salon in San Francisco, waltzing along without a mask, her hair wet, and in the presence of salon staff. Governor Gavin Newsom of California remains under fire for bizarre and arbitrary rules keeping the economy of that state shut down. Small business owners are being destroyed as people are being driven into poverty. San Francisco's politicians, as of September 1st, raised their scepter and declared salons could open for outdoor hairstyling only. They do not allow hair coloring outside, because other restrictions ban certain chemicals from being introduced into the environment. The salon Mrs. Pelosi was visiting was shut to the general public, but was contacted by a freelance stylist who rents a station in the salon who said that Mrs. Pelosi had contacted them and was coming in. While this episode in and of itself is worthy of outrage, it is just one more illustration of how the ruling class believes that they are above the law. It's not just insulting, it's dangerous. It shows that politicians feel more than comfortable issuing draconian, grotesque, and dangerous laws, viewing American citizens as collateral damage in their fun little game and obsessive drive for power. While Mrs. Pelosi flouts the law in her home city, as women who are not multimillionaires watch their hard work and futures go down the drain, we also have Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney, who banned indoor dining in that great American city due to COVID-19. He was then seen enjoying a lovely indoor dining experience in Maryland. Philadelphians noticed and are not happy. This arrogant flouting of what are supposed to be existential laws and rules reveals something especially urgent. These politicians are admitting with their own behavior that they don't believe those rules are even necessary. The lockdown of small businesses, including restaurants, is based on the argument that it's a matter of life and death. Wear that mask or you're going to kill grandma, or indoor dining can't happen because you're going to die or you're going to cause somebody else to die. And then the keep that salon or store or gym or church closed because, again, everyone's going to die. That lecture. Neither Mrs. Pelosi or Mr. Kenney felt that they were in danger by flouting laws and rules they force on others in the name of the ubiquitous safety. We see this double standard on a gigantic scale with condemnation and scorn by Democratic politicians of Trump political gatherings, while they support and even encourage left-wing political demonstrations and riots. Isn't it time we end this? Many are observing that this hypocrisy and the nonsensical nature of the shutdown prove it is a political effort to depress the economy because it might hurt President Trump. The Daily Caller reported internal polling at the Trump campaign showing that likely voters still care significantly more about jobs and the economy than any other issue heading into the 2020 election. No doubt the Democrats have found the same thing. Many have been perplexed at the inexplicable decisions by Democrats keeping major American cities like New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco shut down. But by shutting down those economic engines, perhaps they imagine this will harm Trump. They don't even think about. Their hatred for Mr. Trump is completely consuming them at our expense. Deliberate economic destruction while allowing domestic terrorism to continue on a nightly basis in some great American cities tells us, at the very least, what they're capable of.
This is Tammy Bruce.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. It's the latest from Fox News Podcasts, The Campaign with Bret Baier, with updates from reporters on the trail and in-studio experts. Bret keeps you informed on the 2020 race. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com and download The Campaign with Bret Baier now.
Love Fox News? Click the subscribe button to get more of the news and opinion you trust. And click the Fox News Rundown playlist for the latest episodes.